Hey guys, LevelCap here, and today we're going to take a look at World of Tanks. This is a game that I'm sure many of you have heard about. I'm not sure how many of you have played it, but if you want to try it out, I've been given an access code for anyone creating a new account. You can type in LevelCapGaming, all in caps, and you'll get 500 gold, 300,000 credits, 3 days of premium, and a free tank, which is actually quite awesome, especially considering it's totally free for the first 500 people who use this code. Now, World of Tanks, this game actually came out in 2010 in Russia, and then later in 2011 started to make its way into other countries, and pretty much from the start was an instantaneous success. It's a tank simulator, a little bit more arcadey in the sense that it gets you into the game very quickly, but there's also a lot of realism to this game in just the knowledge of tanks, their armor, and how accurate the tank models are to the real life ones. Now, what surprised me right away when starting to play this game was that it actually looks really good. I downloaded the high def texture pack, was playing at 1440p. The graphics are quite good, and overall it just doesn't strike me as a game that came out in 2010. Granted, that's not that long ago, but at the same time I would have easily believed that this game came out in 2014 or even 2015 if someone told me. One thing that I also appreciated at the start is that it's a very easy game to get into. They don't overload you with too much strategy right at the start, but there is a huge amount of depth to it, so it's easy to get into but hard to master, which I think is the sign of any well-designed game. It lures you in with the easy-to-learn mechanics and then says, hey, there is a huge amount of depth to the skill and strategy of this game. Have fun learning that. And at this point, I'm well over 100 games into learning World of Tanks, and I have to say it's just enough experience to realize how bad I am at this game. I thought I was doing pretty decent at some tiers, and then you get up to another tier and you just get wrecked and you're like, oh wow, I know nothing. The game actually has so much skill and strategy depth to it that it's been hugely successful in the esports world for quite some time. And I found myself watching some of the World Championship videos on YouTube of this game and just realizing just how poorly I play overall. But it's a fun learning experience and always challenging and always inspiring to try and get you to like try out new tanks or new play styles. And on its surface, it might just look like I'm driving a tank around and shooting at other tanks, and yeah, that is sort of the essence of what this game is, but there's many different tiers of tanks and many different classifications of tanks that all play very, very specific roles. In fact, I think there's over 250 tanks in this game. I was trying to find the full number for it. Some people are saying 270 tanks if you count some of the premium tanks you can get, and that is a lot of tanks to be familiar with. Each tank has different spots where it's more vulnerable. They have certain amounts of armor on their front, sides, their turret has different armor levels, and it's important to know that when aiming at other tanks, because you have to know if you can penetrate their front armor, if you have to go for side shots, or if you should be aiming at their turrets or just try and take out their treads so you can get around behind them. It's not just like playing a first-person shooter where you aim for the head and call it good. There is way more depth to this. Now, the tanks are all broken up into different factions. You've got the Soviet Union, Germany, Britain, France, China, Japan, the United States, Czechoslovakia. I mean, there is just a huge amount of nations to consider when choosing a respective tech tree. Do you want to go with US tanks in the start? Do you want to go with Russian tanks at the start? You can go with literally all the tanks, but I think it makes a little bit more sense to try and progress down at least one tech tree at the start so that you can make more progress. If you try and go down all tech trees at the start, you're going to be dividing your time and experience among all these different tech trees, and you won't get to the higher tier tanks as quickly. Now, because there's so many tanks, I did do a bit of research online to try and figure out which trees I should progress through or which tanks are the best. A lot of people are saying if you're not really too sure with the game, then just go with the Russian tech tree because they have a lot of good options at all tiers. And I totally ignored that advice and went with the German line of tanks because I wanted to get that Tiger tank, that iconic behemoth of war. I unfortunately haven't gotten to that yet. It's quite a bit of experience and time to get to the Tiger tank. I will get there one day, I hope, But the PZ2, a tier 2 tank, I fell in love with right at the start of the game and was just wrecking people. Now, early tier tanks, the strategy I would say is a bit easier. Some of the tanks are just significantly better than others, and I think that changes from nation to nation as you progress from one tier to the next. Like, I had a great time with a tier 2 tank when playing the Germans, but then I went tier 3 and was just not having a good time at all. And then tier 4, I just absolutely fell in love with the Matilda tank from the Brits, which is a heavy tank and played way differently than the previous tanks I was used to, and I had to kind of develop a whole new set of skills and strategies to how I play the game. And that's the interesting thing about the classifications of tanks and how it completely changes up what your role is on the battlefield. There's 5 different types of tanks. You have light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks. The light tanks are good for scouting and moving really quickly, getting around behind enemy lines as you would expect. Medium tanks are kind of a hybrid between lights and heavies. They can perform a variety of different roles. Heavy tanks are definitely your workhorses. They can absorb a lot of damage and dish out a lot of damage. They usually just take a bit longer to actually get to the battle. Then you have tank destroyers, which are excellent at engaging at long range, but don't have a lot of maneuverability, and their turrets generally don't turn around. They're just like mounted on the front of the tank, so you have to like turn the whole body of the tank to shoot stuff. And then you have basically artillery. They're called SPGs, which stands for self-propelled guns. And those guys can park way in the back of the map, and they use basically the spotting from the rest of the team to guide their shots and land tanks. And you can just get blown up out of the middle of nowhere because you've been spotted by a light tank that's scouting you, and then an artillery tank blows you up. This starts to happen sort of at mid-tiers a bit more, and it's a different element that you have to start dealing with. Sometimes it's not the best idea just to sit still because it makes you hugely vulnerable to artillery. An interesting element of the game too is the fact that moving really affects your aim. So there is a big benefit to actually staying stationary and watching a certain corner waiting for somebody to peek, because you're going to have the best accuracy right when you fire. And you can train your crew and upgrade parts of your tank to try and improve that, and certain tanks have it better than others. But it is a very interesting element that rewards stationary players in one way and then hurts them in another way, in the sense that they're very vulnerable to artillery. So you have to kind of just really figure out what you're up against and what the best play style is, especially based on what kind of tank you're running. But yeah, anyway, I have to say I'm pleasantly surprised by how much fun I've been having with this game. I gotta get that Tiger tank. I know I probably should have gone down maybe the Russian line at first, but that Tiger tank just looks so awesome and menacing, and one day it will be mine. Now, this is a free-to-play game, and if you're thinking about getting into it, make sure to use that LevelCapGaming code. There's a link in the description that'll take you to the game website, and that'll get you hooked up with some very valuable and needed starting cash to get you a nice little army of tanks. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. This is LevelCap signing off.